The Simpsons Hit and Run, a game that many remember fondly as family-friendly Grand Theft Auto, is still a joy to experience decades later. But you, dear viewer, already knew that, didn't you? You came for those sweet game-breaking glitches that become the icing on this hilarious cake. And you won't be disappointed, as Hit and Run has some of the most fun glitches this side of Springfield. So grab a Duff or a Buzz Cola, strap in, and
let's do this thing!
So without a doubt, a great glitch to kick things off with is this one that launches cars at breakneck speed. Driving slightly into a street lamp and then quickly exiting the vehicle as the post begins to fall, you then want to drive forward until the leaning street lamp is roughly like this. Exit the vehicle once again and then stand on top of it and finally perform a ground pound. The vehicle will now be wildly ejected from the street lamp, launching it far into the distance. It seems that this is merely a collision glitch where the street lamp and the vehicle's collision detection basically force each other out, resulting in this addictively fun glitch. You won't always get these same kinds of launches, as a lot of how far the car goes depends on the placement of the street lamp, but the hope is always to send it flying across the map. This street lamp glitch understandably became the most famous glitch in the game, but we've got a lot of ground to cover. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just to say, you can support the channel via Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and I'm looking to expand the benefits to those who decide to support, so why not check it out? Back to the episode. In the mission Blind Big Brother, it's possible to crash the game by unloading the power couplings. This is done by simply driving as far as Springfield Elementary, turning back, and then returning to the power plant, where the couplings will now be gone. And if you get close to where the couplings were, the game will crash. Well, I guess that's the end of that one then. No, you're not seeing things. This car really doesn't have a driver. This is the invisible driver glitch, and it's really simple to do. Firstly, you need a car which is already driven by another character, like the family sedan or Grandpa Simpson's World War II vehicle. You next need to seek out one of the WASP cameras located around a level, and then position your car so that the driver is in the line of fire when the WASP camera fires its electric projectile. If the driver is hit, they'll take damage much like the player would, however, they'll be sent flying out of the car. You see, there's no check from the game to see if the driver is still inside the vehicle because they're not intended to take damage under normal conditions. Or rather, it's highly unlikely they'd be hit by stage hazards. Therefore, the game is programmed to assume the driver is always in the car and behaves the same as it always does. This means it's now possible to drive around in the car with the driver staying wherever they landed after taking damage, essentially giving you an invisible driver. As we can see here, Homer now acts out the vehicle movement while remaining in place, which is something to witness all by itself. Character voices still play out as if the driver were sat next to you, despite them perhaps being a long way away. You can also run the driver over and watch them roll around trying to catch their balance, if that's the kind of thing you're into. And when you've had your fun, changing mission or level returns things back to normal, but where's the fun in that? If you've ever wanted to drive around with your car on fire, I mean, who doesn't, which is something that's usually not possible, then there's a very simple oversight glitch you may want to try. Damage your current vehicle to 100%, which you can see in the phone booth menu, and then simply select that car to spawn outside of the phone booth. You'll see that it's now on fire, and you're able to drive it around as much as you like, provided you don't crash into anything. Because the second you even slightly touch another object, that car's gonna explode as intended. And this can be done with any vehicle in the game, so go nuts. I think this gives a whole new meaning to burning rubber. During the mission The Fat and the Furious, you have to beat Smithers in a race which takes you all the way through the first level. But there's a really glitchy shortcut that will guarantee you win this race. Before you speak to Carl to start the mission, park your car in the doorway of the power plant roughly like this. Now head over to Carl to start the mission, and you'll see Smithers race away from the power plant, so now you'll need to jump in your car. You'll now see that it's inside a huge door that cuts you off from going through the power plant, which is the easy way to Mr. Burns' mansion, but you're still able to enter the car as expected. So you can now just simply drive out of the door and make a direct pass to the end of the race, making very quick work of this particular mission. Inside the power plant, you'll see workers dressed in radiation suits, and they only appear in this area of level 1. Meanwhile, other parts of Springfield feature regular pedestrians. But this next glitch is something that changes that temporarily. It's also here we'll be using our first instance of a cheat code, namely the horn jumping cheat, to bring about some unintended results. To activate a cheat, pause the game, enter the options menu, and then enter the following button prompts for your desired console. Back to the power plant, drive until you reach the Stonecutter's tunnel, and then when you reach these stairs, honk the horn and you'll be sent flying into the air. And once you land back on solid ground outside the tunnel, you'll quickly notice that all the pedestrians have been replaced by radiation suit wearing workers. You see, when we jumped in the Stonecutter's tunnel, the game expected us to be grounded, but instead we flew over a trigger for this area to load correctly, or more specifically, the kinds of NPCs that occupy it. The game still thinks we're inside the power plant basically, and even the music from the Stonecutter's tunnel still plays in the background. However, once you drive beyond a certain point, the game will reload the level and the NPCs and the music is corrected. This one is pretty crazy. Park up on the fire truck ladder with a vehicle that will roll backwards once you exit it. Now just let it roll to the bottom of the ladder and then enter the car and then simply begin driving around. It should be immediately obvious to you that something is off, as the physics and speed of the car have been dialed up to insane. When a car goes over a stunt ramp in the game, the car gets a boost so it can launch off the ramp faster. However, when the car leaves the stunt area backwards, that additional speed is stacked on top of the vehicle's normal speed. As it's intended, the vehicle always accelerates forward through the stunt using the speed boost in the process. Going backwards down the ladder means essentially the boost is accounted for but never used, and seemingly if you don't physically drive through the stunt area, there's no check to tell the game you've left at all if you let the vehicle slide out backwards. And the result is this crazy driving experience where your car feels out of control. But I'll tell you what, it sure is a lot of fun to play around with. Why not try out other vehicles too? They each have different properties which add to the chaos. Here's a useful glitch which disables traffic for some of those more challenging missions where traffic is an obstacle you'd rather do without. To pull this glitch off, firstly you need to enter a street race which removes all cars on the streets for the duration of the race. So you can enter a time trial or a checkpoint race, and then as it begins, press start and then cancel the race. When prompted if you're sure you want to cancel the current mission, select yes, then immediately press start again as quickly as possible. Now you just need to choose another mission to go to, and when you're loaded into that mission you chose, you'll notice a distinct lack of cars on the road. This is because there's a very brief window before the traffic respawns in after cancelling the race, and quickly switching missions during that time cancels out the traffic respawn, and that carries over to the regular game mode. Needless to say, clearing the streets is very useful for some of the harder missions like Set to Kill in level 6 for instance, so I dare say you should try this one out for sure if you want an easier life. During the mission Flowers by Irene, the van that you have to follow can sometimes get knocked off course, and if this happens to you, sit back and enjoy the show as you're about to witness the game's AI trying to get back on track. And let me tell you, this is some of the worst driving you've ever seen in your life. It takes some time for the logic to check out and finally get the show back on the road, but you'll have a good laugh at its expense, that's for sure. I just gotta say, this is such a dumb glitch. For some weird reason, in level 7, if you stand on top of the swing sets and then interact with them, even when they've collapsed, the collision for them still remains active, leaving Homer standing in the air. Now this is only strange because in levels 1 and 4, when you interact with the swings in the same way, they behave as you might expect. So something about the swings in level 7 must have their behavior altered somehow. Maybe it's Halloween ghosts, who knows. In level 2, in the train yard, you can find one train that for some reason the slope parts of the roof aren't completely solid, allowing Bart to clip inside them. This doesn't serve any real purpose, but it's unusual since the same train model exists several times in this area with proper collision applied, so it's possible the train was just missed somehow during development. At the rear of the building with the Lard Lad statue on top of it, you'll find these vents that can boost you upwards to the roof. And it's here that you can see something unusual if you get blown up high and then press the attack button. You'll see that once the attack ends, the developers didn't intend for you to still be falling out of the attack animation, and you'll see the player go into the default T-pose until they touch the ground again. Traditionally, certain animations only play for a number of frames. This one in particular is supposed to be used close to the ground, so it's expected the player would land well before it ends. But with enough height, you can see Homer or Marge assert their dominance in a full-blown T-pose. For some reason, it's possible to drive inside the Flanders house if you get a car in the backyard. To do that, you can either drive head-on at this opening in the fence and slowly but surely get through, or you can simply use the horn to jump cheat from earlier. Once you've got a car in the Flanders backyard, you then need to pull up to the side of the house like so, and then simply drive to the right, and for some reason, you'll very easily clip inside the house. There's really nothing to this glitch, sadly, but it's super weird that you can do this at all, and the fact that there's some broken collision is very odd. Okay, this next glitch is a walk through walls glitch and requires a little bit of setup, but it'll be worth it, maybe. In the final mission of level 6, speak to Homer to get the mission going, and instead of going along with the mission as expected, quickly jump out of the car and run over to the android dungeon and enter. This will fail the mission, and when asked to retry, select skip and then immediately aim for the door and mash the action button to leave. The cutscene will play out, which you can also skip, but when returning to gameplay, you won't be able to move. Now select whichever level you'd like and then find a character to start a race, like Ralph. However, when you try and activate the cutscene, it won't work. Instead, you need to get in your car and then it will start. Well, not really. You'll be placed on top of your current vehicle and nothing will happen, but essentially you've gotten the glitch effect you want. So now select a level you want to explore, and when you arrive there, suddenly you'll be able to walk through walls. I'm not entirely sure why this works. My guess would be the game believes you're currently in a race, in which event you'd be in a car so your character model would have its collision turned off, but that's a very simplistic theory as to what's really happening with this one. Whatever the reason, it's a lot of fun to just go wherever you want, so try this one out for yourself and see what you can discover. Now for a very interesting glitch to pull off, aptly named the ghost car glitch. Now in order to experience this, you need a specific setup, and thankfully there's one in the mission office space, which goes something like this. Grab a civilian vehicle and then go to Lenny outside Krusty Burger. Now park the car roughly like this so it's close enough to be entered from the short cutscene that's about to play out with Lenny. End the cutscene and then immediately get in the civilian car by mashing the action button, and bear in mind there's a very brief window for this to actually work. But if it does, you may notice that something is slightly off, and now you'll be placed inside the next closest civilian vehicle. Okay, what's happening is you tried to enter the car you parked while it wasn't actually loaded, because it unloads while the cutscene with Lenny plays out. So the game will look for the next available vehicle for you to drive, but you're loaded into it in an unusual way. In other words, Homer isn't loaded into it at all, and he'll still be standing next to Lenny. It's a little like the invisible driver glitch from earlier, but things get really weird from here, as if you drive away from Homer, things will begin to unload, like the car you're driving and even parts of the map. And now you can see why it's called the ghost car glitch, right? This is because the way the game calls out things to save memory and run optimally is based on the player model's location, and because that's somewhere else, the game technically considers us in a different location. A slightly watered down but easier version of this glitch can be achieved at the end of Principal Skinner's mission in level 3. Once you've finished this mission, mash jump out of this cutscene and quickly get into your car, and you'll see Lisa disappears and is now stood outside the car. Parts of the map also get culled out like before, but the only difference here is that the car remains on screen. Needless to say, this is a very bizarre but fascinating glitch. The Simpsons Hit and Run has to be one of the easiest games to break in terms of getting out of bounds, with several ways of achieving it. The hands down easiest being this wall clip outside Springfield Elementary, where you simply walk into the corner of the wall and double jump. You'll now fall through the floor and land quite a way under the map of Springfield. Other ways of getting out of bounds involve the horn jump cheat we used earlier, and there are several points of the map, namely the bridges, that you can launch yourself off to reach parts of the game you were never intended intended to, and you won't be respawned back into the map like you'd expect. And this opens the world to some out-of-bounds exploration where you can see a whole host of hidden things. You're even able to get out of the car and run around, but make sure you don't double jump, otherwise Homer and family will fall to their doom in style. You can use the horn jump cheat to get out of bounds in level 3 and 6 as well. Simply get on a large ship at the dock and then aim for the lighthouse and you'll end up in the fake ocean. Also, flying boats. You can use the unlockable RC car and the horn jump cheat to get out of bounds in level 1 and 7 to see some really cool things. Use the horn jump at this end of the Simpsons street and you'll easily clear a boundary other vehicles usually aren't able to. Keep driving in this direction and you'll see the Simpsons living room, which you can take a closer look at without the restrictions of the camera. Although sadly, this room has collisions stopping you from driving through it. It's still really cool to see the room from this angle and the tricks the devs use to make it seem more than it is. In level 7, you can also see Bart's room in a similar fashion, so that's neat. You'll also find Lisa and Apu out here, and driving into them knocks them way into the air. If you've had your fun and are looking to get back to the actual part of the map, you simply need to choose a mission and things go back to how they should be. Man, I will never not love out-of-bounds glitches. And that about does it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe with bells on for future episodes. And a huge shout out to these Patreon supporters: Benny E. Carrillo, Bram Borger Johnson, Michael Fabig, and Z-Man and Tails. A huge thanks to everyone who supports the Patreon, and to those who subscribe to the channel. You're all amazing. Catch you in the next episode.